There's a photograph taken in Geneva in the winter of 2007. It shows a man in his early 30s, dark suit, unremarkable face, standing outside a private bank on Rue du Rhône. His name was Hervé Falciani, and at that moment, he was carrying something that would shatter the financial order of the Western world. Not a weapon, not a manifesto, just a simple hard drive, no bigger than a paperback book, hidden in the lining of his jacket. On that drive were the secrets of nearly 30,000 clients. Tax evaders, arms dealers, dictators, some of the wealthiest, most powerful families on earth. And Hervé Falciani, a systems engineer at HSBC's Swiss private banking division, had just stolen all of it. But here's the thing. He didn't do it for money. He didn't do it for fame. And when you hear his story, you'll realize that what he did changed everything about how we see wealth, power, and the invisible architecture that protects both. This is the story of the man who hacked the world's richest families. And it begins, like so many stories do, with a question that wouldn't go away. Hervé Falciani was not supposed to be a whistleblower. He was not supposed to be a hero or a villain. He was supposed to be invisible. That's what people like him are hired for. IT specialists, systems engineers, the quiet architects who build the digital vaults that keep other people's secrets. Falciani grew up in Monaco, the son of a French-Italian family. He studied computer science. He was good with systems, good with patterns. The kind of person who sees the world as a series of connections and vulnerabilities. In 2006, he was hired by HSBC's private banking arm in Geneva. Not the regular HSBC you see on street corners in London or New York. This was different. This was the shadowy, old-world side of banking, the part that exists to serve the ultra-wealthy. The clients who don't just want their money managed. They want it hidden, protected, made invisible. Switzerland has always been the natural home for this kind of banking. Neutrality, discretion, mountains and old stone buildings, and laws written specifically to protect secrecy. For centuries, Swiss banks have been the fortress where the world's richest people hide their fortunes from taxes, from governments, from ex-wives and enemies, and anyone else who might come looking. HSBC's Geneva branch was one of the crown jewels of this system, and Hervé Falciani had access to all of it. At first, it was just a job. Maintain the servers, update the security, make sure the system runs smoothly. But then, slowly, something began to bother him. He started noticing patterns in the data. Accounts linked to sanctioned regimes. Names he recognized from the news. Shell companies layered on top of shell companies, all designed to obscure where the money came from and where it was going. He saw accounts belonging to arms traffickers, to politicians in developing countries siphoning off foreign aid, to businessmen dodging taxes while their home countries crumbled under austerity. And the more he saw, the more a single thought crystallized in his mind. This isn't just wealth management. This is a machine designed to let the powerful escape the rules that bind everyone else. There's something profoundly human about that moment when you realize the system you're part of is broken. Most people push the thought away. They rationalize. They tell themselves it's not their problem. But Falciani couldn't. The question kept gnawing at him. If he could see this, if he had proof of what was happening, what was his responsibility? To stay quiet? To protect the system? Or to do something about it? By 2008, Falciani had made his decision. He began copying files. Slowly at first, carefully. Account details, transaction histories, client names, addresses, shell company structures. All of it meticulously organized in HSBC systems. All of it accessible to someone with his clearance. He used external hard drives. He worked late nights, alone in the office, when the only sound was the hum of the servers and the faint ticking of his own heartbeat. What he was doing was technically theft, but to Falciani, it felt like something else. Like archaeology, like excavating the buried truth of how modern wealth actually works. He wasn't just stealing data. He was pulling back the curtain on a parallel economy, one that most people don't even know exists. The files he copied revealed a staggering network. Over $100 billion in hidden assets, nearly 30,000 accounts, clients from over 200 countries, European aristocrats, Middle Eastern royalty, Latin American oligarchs, celebrities, CEOs, politicians. Some names you'd recognize instantly, others you'd never heard of, but who controlled more wealth than small nations. And woven through all of it was the same basic story. Money earned in one place, hidden in another. Taxes avoided, laws circumvented, a global elite playing by a completely different set of rules. In December 2008, Falciani walked out of the HSBC building for the last time. He had the data, he had the proof, but he didn't yet know what to do with it. Falciani went into hiding, first in France, where he approached the French tax authorities and intelligence services. He didn't want money. He wanted protection, and he wanted the information to be used, to hold people accountable, to show the world what he had found. The French were skeptical at first. Who was this guy? Was it a trap? Was the data real? But when they started digging through the files, they realized what they had. It was the largest leak of banking data in history. A Rosetta Stone for understanding how the ultra-wealthy hide their fortunes. But here's where the story gets complicated. Because once the data was out there, once governments and journalists got their hands on it, Falciani's motives started to matter less than what other people wanted to do with the information. Some saw him as a hero, a whistleblower exposing systemic corruption. Others saw him as a thief, a traitor to the banking system. HSBC launched an international manhunt. Swiss authorities issued an arrest warrant. Interpol got involved. And slowly, country by country, the data began to leak into the public sphere. The revelations were staggering. In France, the government used the data to reclaim hundreds of millions of euros in unpaid taxes. In Spain, over 600 individuals were investigated, including famous bullfighters, business magnates, and members of high society. But it wasn't just about taxes. The data revealed something darker. Accounts linked to arms dealers who supplied weapons to conflict zones. Connections to blood diamonds, to human trafficking networks, to corrupt officials stealing from their own people. This wasn't just about rich people avoiding taxes. It was about a financial system that enabled some of the worst crimes in the world by offering secrecy and protection to anyone who could pay. HSBC, of course, denied everything. Or rather, they issued the kind of carefully worded statements that banks always issue when they're caught. They claimed they were cooperating with authorities. They said they had improved their systems, but they never admitted to facilitating crime. In 2012, they paid nearly $2 billion in fines to U.S. authorities for money laundering, including laundering money from Mexican drug cartels and violating sanctions against Iran and other countries. But no executives went to jail. No one lost their banking license. The machine kept running. And Hervé Falciani became a ghost. He moved from country to country, always looking over his shoulder, never entirely safe. Switzerland wanted him extradited. HSBC wanted him silenced. And the people whose names were in his files, the people who had the most to lose, wanted him gone. He saw how casually the wealthy treated laws that everyone else had to follow, how bankers enabled it, profited from it, built entire careers around helping people escape the social contract. And he made a choice that would cost him everything. In 2015, Falciani was arrested in Spain at the request of Swiss authorities. Spain initially agreed to extradite him, but then something unexpected happened. The Spanish government, which had used his data to prosecute hundreds of tax evaders, reversed course. They argued that extraditing him would undermine the public interest, that his information had been invaluable in fighting financial crime. He was released, but his legal troubles were far from over. He spent years fighting extradition attempts, moving between countries where he had some level of protection. He gave interviews. He testified before the European Parliament. He became a kind of folk hero to some, a cautionary tale to others. And through it all, he maintained the same story. He didn't do it for money. He didn't do it for fame. He did it because he believed that the system was broken and someone needed to show the world how broken it was. In 2018, he was finally arrested in Madrid. But by then, his data had already changed the world. Dozens of countries had launched investigations. Thousands of people had been prosecuted. Billions in unpaid taxes had been recovered. And the conversation about offshore banking, about tax havens, about financial secrecy had fundamentally shifted. The Swiss sentenced him in absentia to 5 years in prison. But he never served it because Spain, again, refused to extradite him. And eventually, slowly, the heat began to die down. Not because people forgot, but because the world had moved on to new scandals. The Panama Papers, the Paradise Papers, each one revealing the same basic truth. The system that Falciani exposed isn't going away. If anything, it's gotten more sophisticated. Today, Hervé Falciani lives in France. He keeps a low profile. He's written a book, given some talks, but mostly he's faded from public view. The banker who hacked the world's richest families is now just another middle-aged man trying to live a quiet life. But his legacy is everywhere. Every time a government cracks down on tax havens, every time a journalist investigates offshore accounts, every time someone asks why the wealthy play by different rules, Falciani's ghost is there. Because he proved something that everyone suspected, but no one had evidence for. He proved that there really is a parallel economy, a hidden architecture of wealth that exists solely to help the rich escape the obligations the rest of us live under. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of the people whose names were in Falciani's files, they're fine. They paid some fines. They endured some bad publicity. But their wealth is still there. Their power is still there. The system that protected them is still there. HSBC is still operating, still one of the largest banks in the world. They paid their fines. They've promised to do better. But the basic model, the basic service they offer, it hasn't changed. Because there will always be people with money to hide. And there will always be banks willing to hide it. So what was it all for? Was Falciani a hero? A criminal? A whistleblower? A thief? Maybe he was all of those things. Maybe that's the point. We want stories to be simple. We want clear heroes and villains. But the truth is messy, eh? Falciani broke the law. He stole data. He violated contracts and confidentiality agreements. And in doing so, he exposed a system of corruption and inequality that affects billions of people. He showed us something we weren't supposed to see. And whether you think that makes him a hero or a criminal says more about you than it does about him. What haunts me about this story is the loneliness of it. The moment when Falciani...
Well, it's pretty clear. HEMRC. Well, to England, of course. To England.
And what does it say?
So here's what I'll leave you with. The next time you hear about a tax scandal, or an offshore leak, or wealthy people avoiding billions in taxes while public services crumble, remember Hervé Falciani. Remember the systems engineer who became a whistleblower, who gave up everything to show us what we weren't supposed to see. And ask yourself, what would you have done if you had that knowledge, that power, that choice? Would you have stayed silent? Would you have taken a safe path? Or would you have done what Falciani did and step into the unknown, armed with nothing but the belief that some truths are too important to hide? If this story made you think, if it made you question the systems we take for granted, consider subscribing to Mac 8. We tell stories that matter. Stories about power, about money, about the invisible structures that shape our lives. Falciani proved that. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.
The ones that you sent in 2008, if I could just hand it over to you, what do you think about, what have you got there?
Oh yeah, this is really nice. Yeah, this is my email, of course. Yeah.
And who's it to?
Too much walls.
Who have you sent it to?
Well, it's pretty clear. HEMRC and well, to England, of course. To England.
And what does it say?